Every single day, you lose arguments you shouldn't lose. Not because you're wrong, not because the facts are against you, but because the other person is using techniques so deeply embedded in how humans argue that most people never even notice them. These are called logical fallacies, and they show up in political speeches, advertising, social media comment sections, and the kitchen table conversation you had last Tuesday. Once you learn to name them, you'll start seeing them everywhere, and you'll never get caught off guard the same way again. These are 22 of the most dangerous logical fallacies you're going to actually encounter. Number 1, the ad hominem, the oldest trick available. Instead of attacking your argument, someone attacks you. You point out a flaw in a company's business model, and someone says, well, you've never run a business. You raise a concern about diet advice, and someone says, you're not exactly in great shape yourself. Notice what just happened. Your actual point was never addressed. The conversation moved from the idea to the person, and the idea died quietly in the background. Whenever someone goes after the speaker instead of the argument, that's ad hominem. Name it, and the move loses half its power. Number 2, tu quoque. This is ad hominem's more sophisticated cousin. Tu quoque means you also. It's the move where someone dodges a criticism by pointing out that you're guilty of the same thing. A doctor tells their patient to stop eating processed food. The patient says, I saw you eating a burger last week. Even if that's completely true, it doesn't change whether processed food is bad for you. The doctor's personal behavior has no logical connection to whether the advice is correct. Tu quoque feels like a knockout punch. It isn't one. Number 3, the straw man. Your opponent takes what you said, quietly replaces it with a weaker version, and attacks that instead. You say we should reduce military spending to fund infrastructure. Suddenly, they're accusing you of wanting to leave the country defenseless against foreign threats. That's not what you said. It's a distorted version of what you said, rebuilt to be easier to knock down. The straw man is everywhere in political debate precisely because it works. People hear the scarier version and forget to check whether it's what was actually argued. Number 4, the red herring. Named after a smelly fish that hunters would drag across a trail to confuse dogs following a scent. A red herring is anything introduced into a debate that pulls attention away from what actually matters. A politician gets asked why they voted to cut education funding. They give a passionate, detailed answer about their support for first responders. Moving, but completely off topic. The question never got answered, most of the audience didn't notice, and the original issue quietly disappeared. Number 5, false cause. 2 things happen around the same time, and someone concludes one caused the other. Ice cream sales spike in summer, so do drowning rates. Does ice cream cause drowning? Obviously not. Both go up when the weather gets hot. But this is exactly how false cause reasoning infects health debates, economic arguments, and crime statistics. Correlation gets sold as causation. And the claim sounds convincing until you think about it for more than 30 seconds. Number 6, the appeal to emotion. Logic requires evidence. Evidence requires time. Emotion is immediate. The appeal to emotion skips the evidence entirely and goes straight for whatever will make you feel something. Charities that show one specific child's face raise more money than charities that present data on millions of children. Political ads built around a single crime spike more fear than crime rate statistics. The emotion you feel is real. What the emotion is being used to hide often isn't. And those are just the obvious ones. The next group operates below the surface, which is why they're harder to spot and harder to counter. Number 7, the appeal to the majority. The fact that most people believe something has no logical bearing on whether it's true. The earth was round when every available authority believed it was flat. Bloodletting was standard medical practice while it was actively killing patients. The appeal to majority argues that widespread belief equals correctness. It doesn't. Consensus is evidence worth considering. It's not the same thing as proof. Number 8, the burden of proof. Someone makes a sweeping claim. You push back. They say, well, prove it's not true. That's a reversal of how logical argument works. The burden of proof always lies with whoever is making the assertion. If someone tells you a supplement cures cancer, it isn't your job to prove it doesn't. It's their job to prove it does. Flipping this burden is one of the most common tricks used to make fringe claims sound credible. Number 9. The anecdotal fallacy. Your uncle started taking a supplement and his joint pain disappeared in 2 weeks. Does that mean the supplement works? Your great-grandmother smoked every day and lived past 90. Does that mean cigarettes are safe? Individual stories are powerful. They're also almost meaningless as scientific evidence when actual data says something different. The anecdotal fallacy is what happens when one person's experience overrides thousands of data points that point in the opposite direction. Number 10. The Texas sharpshooter. Picture someone firing bullets randomly at the side of a barn. Afterward, they walk up and paint targets around the clusters where the bullets landed. Now, they look like an expert marksman. This is how Texas sharpshooter reasoning works in practice. Someone digs through a large set of data, finds the pattern that fits what they already believe, ignores everything that contradicts it, and presents the result as evidence. The conclusion came first. The data was searched until something matched. Number 11, cherry picking. 42 studies find a drug works no better than a placebo. 3 studies find modest positive results. The company publishes the 3 and buries the 42. The evidence they present is technically accurate. The picture it paints is completely false. Cherry picking is the selective use of only the evidence that supports your position while quietly pretending the rest doesn't exist. It's how misleading but technically defensible claims get made in advertising, in politics, and in arguments between otherwise honest people. Number 12. The sunk cost fallacy. You've been in a terrible job for 4 years. You don't quit because you've already given 4 years to this company. You're in a failing business and keep investing money because of everything you've already put in. The sunk cost fallacy is the psychological trap of continuing something specifically because of what you've already lost, rather than evaluating whether continuing makes sense going forward. The past investment is gone either way. The only rational question is what today's decision produces from today onward. Halfway through. These next ones are the sneaky ones, the fallacies that sound like valid reasoning until you slow down enough to examine them. Number 13, the nirvana fallacy. A realistic solution to a real problem gets rejected because it doesn't measure up to a perfect solution that doesn't exist. Universal healthcare has flaws? Of course it does. But the comparison being made is rarely between two realistic systems. It's between the proposed system and some impossible ideal where nothing goes wrong and no one pays anything. Nothing survives that benchmark. The nirvana fallacy is how genuine progress gets killed. Not by a better alternative, but by a fantasy one. Number 14, the false equivalence. Two things get compared as though they're equivalent when the difference between them is massive. Scientists disagree about this vaccine, and scientists disagree about string theory are treated as equally meaningful statements. They aren't. One represents a manufactured controversy with a clear scientific consensus underneath. The other represents a genuine open question at the frontier of physics. False equivalence makes the comparison before it establishes whether the comparison is valid. Number 15. The gambler's fallacy. A coin lands heads 10 times in a row. Most people feel deeply certain the next flip is more likely to be tails. It isn't. The probability is still exactly 50-50, same as it always was. The coin has no memory. The roulette wheel has no memory. Past random events don't influence future random events. But our brains are pattern recognition machines that were built in an environment where most patterns meant something. Here, they mean nothing, and the confidence feels exactly the same as when it's justified. Number 16. The genetic fallacy. Rejecting an argument not because of anything wrong with the argument itself, but because of where it came from. That study was funded by a pharmaceutical company, so it can't be trusted. That proposal came from the other side, so it must be wrong. The source of an argument is relevant context. It doesn't determine whether the argument is correct. A well-designed study is a well-designed study regardless of who paid for it. A bad idea is a bad idea regardless of who proposed it. Number 17, moving the goalposts. You meet the standard someone set. They immediately require a higher one. You meet that one. Another standard appears. And another. Moving the goalposts is what happens when someone has no real argument left but isn't willing to concede. Every time the evidence satisfies their condition, the condition changes. It makes it structurally impossible to ever win the debate no matter how strong your case is. If you catch this pattern happening, name it out loud. The tactic falls apart once it's visible. Last 4. These are the ones that end conversations instead of resolving them. Number 18. The appeal to tradition. We've always done it this way. That's how it's been done for generations. Things worked better back then. The appeal to tradition argues that age equals validity. But medicine practice 2 centuries ago wasn't better than modern treatment just because it was traditional. Every bad practice that ever existed had a moment when it was traditional. Longevity tells you something survived. It tells you nothing about whether it should. Number 19, special pleading. Someone holds everyone to a strict standard, then carves out an exception for themselves with no logical justification. A judge who argues for harsh sentencing and then expects leniency when their own family member is charged. A CEO who implements mandatory salary freezes and simultaneously approves a raise for themselves. Special pleading is the application of rules to everyone except the person making the rules, without any honest explanation for why the exception exists. Number 20, the thought-terminating cliché. It is what it is. Everything happens for a reason. Boys will be boys. That's just life. These phrases sound like wisdom. They function as conversation enders. They're deployed at the moment when a real question needs a real answer, and their purpose is to make critical thinking stop before it gets somewhere uncomfortable. Recognizing them doesn't mean dismissing the sentiment behind them. It means noticing when a phrase is being used to avoid dealing with an actual problem. Number 21. No true Scotsman. A generalization gets made about a group. A counterexample appears. Instead of acknowledging the counterexample, the person redefines the group to exclude it. Real entrepreneurs never give up. Someone points to a successful entrepreneur who quit a failing business. Well, a real entrepreneur would never have been in that situation to begin with. The definition shifts until it can't be falsified by anything. It's a way of making a sweeping claim permanently immune to evidence. Number 22. The fallacy. This is the trap waiting for everyone who just learned about fallacies. You correctly identify that someone used flawed logic to argue their point. You conclude that because their argument was flawed, their conclusion must be wrong. But those are 2 separate things. Your friend might argue badly that the sky is blue. The sky is still blue. A bad argument for a true thing doesn't make that thing false. Identifying a fallacy means the argument doesn't work. It says nothing about whether the claim is accurate. These 22 fallacies appear in conversations happening right now, in the news, in boardrooms, in relationships, and in your own thinking, on days when you're tired or angry or already sure you're right. Knowing what they're called gives you something that most people don't have, a way to step back from the emotion of an argument and see its actual structure. Not the confidence of the speaker, not the volume, the logic underneath. If this kind of thing interests you, the next video covers how 5 of these fallacies specifically get used in advertising to influence purchases you didn't plan on making. It's on screen now.